Alright, coming back at you with another replay. Had some pretty good games today. Had that Kislev one earlier against Khorne that I was showing off, and now I got Nurgle versus Khorne. Not a very favorable matchup, all things considered, against Khorne with Nurgle. Just so much mobility by Khorne, it's really hard to contest that. With that in mind, you know, and out of fear that he was going to bring an absolute goon squad against me, I was thinking that he honestly surprised me with what he ended up bringing. I was thinking that he was going to bring an exalted bloodthirster and a regular bloodthirster, just even if I did bring one great unclean one, they'd be able to put a whooping on him. So I brought two. I brought my Exalted, and then I brought a regular Great Unclean one. He's actually not all that expensive, considering. Really slow, and the spells he's got on him are okay. You know, that Plague casting, Miasma of Plague, I think is what it's called. Pretty good. It does lower melee attack, which is probably its greatest utility. And then I've got the, I think all I've got is, yeah, Fleshy Abundance is all I brought on my regular Exalted Great Unclean one. I got the two Cultists, I got their summons, and they're on horses. I was figuring these guys, you know, having them on horses is going to help a little bit with being able to contest against all of this juicy Khorne army. He's brought in 3 units of Flesh Hounds right off the bat, you know. I figured that what he was thinking was that I was going to have Nurglings and a pretty juicy wide army, maybe, which is why he brought a wide army himself. But, you know, you'll see how this battle plays out. It's going to be very interesting for him, having to fight against the Mortis engine on the Exalted Great Unclean one, and both of these guys are really great combatants. I split them up here and run my Cultists in a little early, honestly, and you know, he's not really doing a whole lot. He's got his goon squad rolling around here, but these guys, this Herald and the 2 Cultists are just no match for the sheer power of mine. You know, he's got the mobility advantage, which is something that's going to play into his favor for a little bit here in this match. You know, got the dual weapons, definitely brought those thinking that there would be chaff. I honestly like bringing dual weapons myself in the Khorne vs. Nurgle matchup. I've got another replay that I might show later where I do bring Khorne against Nurgle. That game is pretty crazy too. But here we go, we got a big old melee fight that he's threatening to have here, but he knows this is not his neighborhood. But I got the charge animation on this Cultist, and he's going to get a smack in on this Khorne Cultist. Sunders his armor and sends him running. Just a little bit of poke there. He's got the Flesh Hounds. They charged in a little bit aggressively on my regular Great Unclean one there. Not a very good idea. I mean, the Great Unclean one's just too thick for these guys to handle. Summon in 2 units of Nurglings straight off the bat. I am not worrying about this objective right now. He can sit here and do nothing all he wants. Right here is where the big battle's going down. My Cultist is getting beat up right here. He is isolated from the other 2 single entities I've got. So I use the Plague Bearer summon on the one that is getting bodied right now, just to get it out just in time. Lock down all of these units. These Khorne warriors are going to have a bad time. They're trying to push through, still getting Mortis engine down though over time. And here we've got Nurglings getting swarmed by the other unit of dual weapons and the Flesh Hounds. But I'm trying to get them in here, trying to block off so that this Cultist can try and run away. But he's got his Flesh Hounds, and this is where the mobility of Khorne really shines. He's going to come in here, he's going to... This Cultist is routing right into him. So they're going to be able to just pick him apart as he runs away. There's no coming back now for him. But, you know, I get a pretty good Pestilential Corruption cast here. Whatever the hell it's called. Stream of Corruption. It does pretty decent armor-piercing damage. All armor-piercing damage, actually, I think. It does pretty good work here. And I got the Mortis engine coming in here. And I cast Miasma, Pestilence. So these guys do not have very good stats right now. Sundered armor and everything. The Nurglings are actually putting in some decent work right now. Got my Cultist and both Great Unclean Ones. And he comes in with his Goon Squad. He's trying to clear up my chaff right now. Got my other Plague Bearer summon on top of him. He's blocked in now. All these guys are poisoned. All of the Nurgle effects coming down. He's having a really bad day. And here we go. Here we go. Cultist of Nurgle actually manages to escape, and I bring in some I brought in some Forsaken, trying to get in on this point now that the objectives are unlocked. Banking some pretty good resources there, and I have another one coming in. I had it chasing this unit of Flesh Hounds. No way they're ever going to catch that. So I decided to commit, trying to save these guys, but it's just not happening, and now this Cultist is way overextended. And doesn't have great armor, and these Flesh Hounds have really high DPS. They're going to be able to do some pretty good damage to him. He is not long for this world. But it does distract from these Forsaken right here, who are getting a little bit of distance between them. He really needs to come in here and finish these guys. Knowing that this fight is not going in my favor at all right now, I decided to just give it up. If he wants to waste his time, I mean, not even waste his time, but if he wants to pick these guys apart here, he's more than welcome to. I'm going to just move these two units Forsaken and this Beast of Nurgle. I'm going to get them down on this point. I have got to secure an objective, you know. I'm in a bad spot. He summons in his Bloodletters. Plague Bearers got worked out. Nurglings are all dead. And, yeah, one of his cultists here running, and pretty good damage on the other ones. And this Goon Squad can do solid work. There's just nothing that they can do against all of this meat here. And with the Beast of Nurgle here, does pretty good work debuffing enemy units. So it's going to be even harder for them to work all this down. And now I actually really am holding this objective. I am making a mistake moving all my units off, but I was trying to get this engagement. And he's got Skull Crushers coming in. I completely forgot about these guys. They are going to be absolute workhorses against my large units. But I am bringing in quite a few infantry. And I know that says they're anti-infantry on their little tooltip, but they don't get the bonus. So honestly, they're really just better generalist cavalry than anything. Keeping in mind that I need to hold this objective, I do commit my Beast of Nurgle and my regular Great Unclean One over here, and I've got these Chaos Furies of Nurgle coming in here and finishing off these Chaos Warriors. He's got these Dual Warriors just sitting on his point back here. He really needs to commit these guys. They are not going to do anything over there. There's really nothing for them to fight in the middle, though, which is honestly good for me, bad for him. He's got his two Flesh Hounds coming up and around, and this fight over here is just an absolute mess right now. You know, he's coming in, he's trying to do as much damage as possible, but I get good healing in on this blob. I believe I used Fecundity while this was all going on. You know, this whole time I've been keeping my Exalted Great Unclean One topped up with Fleshy Abundance, and just really getting good work in with those debuffs and armor sundering abilities. Here comes an overcasted Fleshy Abundance, actually. Absolutely crazy healing on it. 1.6 per second. For 20 seconds or so, it heals a full good 30% of HP on units, and these Forsaken have pretty good model counts left. 68 and 62 right now. They're cleaving through all of these Khorne units. I mean, Forsaken are excellent units against Flesh Hounds, honestly. They are able to contest. But my opponent, with his superior mobility, he got around this side, brought in his Flesh Hounds on the back, and I'm using the Spawn and Chaos Furies trying to block these guys from getting on the objective and taking it back from me. And he's starting to work it down here, you know? But having said all that, he's still got to commit to this fight against these two nasty single entities. I mean, Beast of Nurgle is pretty poor combat stacks, but like I said, you bring it in to debuff more than anything. Got my Great Unclean One. He's putting in work. He is going to destroy these guys. They cannot deal with him. They're putting in their own whooping on him. He's getting worked pretty hard, and that flaming damage is really dangerous against him. A little bit of Lapse Micro. This Cultist has been running around. Full health still. Got him and my Exalted Great Unclean One planning on going back to this point. And I left my 2 Forsaken here. He's gonna post up with his Skull Crushers here, you know, and he is gonna try and charge back in, it looks like. Nope. Just gonna sit here on this edge. And I decide that I'm gonna try and bring in all of these Nurglings and all of these Forsaken and bring them back into this middle fight. There is a huge Khorne force coming in. Halberds, dual weapons finally. These ones still sitting over here. A huge waste. I don't really have a whole lot of points right now, as you can see. You know, he doesn't know that, but I mean, I would have figured that he would know, seeing all these units getting spawned in, that he would know that this is probably okay to pull off of for a second. These Chaos Warhounds shatter, these ones he had at the very beginning. Cultist run off finally. Got my Exalted on top of the dual weapons. These dual weapons are going to have a really bad day. And I can see he's pulling all of his units off here. He's got 2 more Flesh Hounds coming in. Scary stuff. More Chaos Warhounds. And I know he's still got these Skull Crushers. I could see that, so I decided to bring back this other unit of Forsaken that have kind of lost a few of their models. Decided to take the Nurgling Swarm, too, and try and move them that way. Because, I mean, the single entities are just dominating over here. I mean, these guys are not ever going to be able to take this objective with all of this sitting on here. They're getting worked down over time with the good Mortis Engine effect by the Great Unclean, Exalted Great Unclean one here. Regular Great Unclean one worked over pretty good, but I get my heal coming down on him. It's gonna really top him up. You know, he's getting close to his healing cap, honestly, and it might even take him there. Pull the Forsaken in. These guys at this point, they're terrified, they're running, they're screwed, they're dead. These spawns still here, you know, doing okay. And finally, here we go, Cultist against Cultist. You know, this guy's pretty low in Sundered Armor. It's gonna be a pretty even fight. I honestly don't know who would win in a vacuum here. Probably the Cultist of Khorne. Nurgle Cultists are okay. He committed hard to this fight. Forgot to kind of looked away too long from it. But he brought in his Skull Crushers, and I answered with my Rotflies that I had sitting up here that maybe some of y'all probably noticed. And then I committed a few more Chaos Furies. Did pretty good work to these Skull Crushers, but his Flesh Hounds got in here. They're doing absolute work on my Rotflies. Rotflies, terrible against Flesh Hounds. Absolutely bodied. Getting destroyed over here, bringing in Furies, trying to save them, but it's not going to happen. These Flesh Hounds are going to tear the Furies apart too. And here you go. This is the power of Khorne. Just absolutely vicious mobility. But seeing that, you know, he's got nothing here. You know, these dual weapons are running away. I'm going to bring my Exalted back over. Got Forsaken here. I think I'm planning on leaving them. Bringing the Cultist back over. He's been running all game. You know, having lost his buddy, being all by himself, he's trying to put in the work too. And he's been doing a pretty damn good job. Trying my hardest to survive here. Forsaken, routing. Nurgling's unstable, you know, but they're here, still holding the line, and I finally got some Chaos Spawn of Nurgle in here. They're gonna do really good poison right now. Absolutely they're gonna give as good as they get against Flesh Hounds. You know, it's not a cost-effective trade for them, but with some Furies here, they're not all alone. Skull Crushers here. Armor Piercing's useless against Spawn and Nurgle, and without any bonus versus large, they're going to do good damage. They got a good charge bonus, and they're going to pick through that HP pretty decently. But with all of this here again now, and I got my Great Unclean one here, I'm going to grind through these Halberds no problem, and I can just focus on trying to pick through as many of these units as possible. You can see how tattered these units are now. You know, the Forsaken are gone, they're not coming back, but these Soul Crushers are not long for this world anymore. And these Flesh Hounds, a lot of them are trapped up here still in this center. They finally managed to get a good bit of them away, but the other ones got dragged down. And here you go. Halberds, no match against a Great Unclean one. Fight's kicking off back in the middle here. Absolute grind fest. Forsaken putting in some pretty good work against these Flesh Hounds and the Chaos Halberds. Got my Beast of Nurgle in here doing pretty good work. I had a Stream of Corruption come in. It took off a fair amount of health from these guys. You know, and the spawn here, one spawn, just holding like a champion. Unbreakable units for the win, man. Doing good work. applying poison and got the Beast of Nurgle's debuffs here. Still standing on this objective and holding it for days, man. Rotfly's gonna come in with some Plague Toads to patch up the holes in the line here. He's got more Chaos Warriors of Khorne with dual weapons coming in. Got my Chaos Spawn here. They're gonna be able to hold pretty well against these guys.
I knew it.
And at this point, my opponent, I think he realized points were really close by that time. He knew that he wasn't going to be able to capture the points in time to regain that lead. Really well played. He really used his mobility well, but I was just able to manage to hold on to these two objectives long enough to get ahead of them and force him into some bad blob fights. That's exactly what you don't want to do against Nurgle. But at a certain point, you are going to have to fight, and if Nurgle's got good positional strength on both objectives, it's kind of hard to break through. There's not a lot that you can bring to the field other than Flesh Hounds and Furies. Furies really aren't even all that good in this matchup, honestly. Maybe you bring them in just to keep Nurgle Furies from doing too much. But, you know, Flesh Hounds can only do so much. They're a great carry for this army in this matchup, but if you can't break and hold two objectives, you're gonna have a really hard time. And the character Goon squads, of course, I mean, just working through this army, they did not have any answers. He didn't have any Bloodthirsters in his reserves, I don't think. If he had, it would have been a really good bet to bring that in, because it would have taken pretty serious damage, but you know, with the other units that he did have that other Goon squad. He had the Herald and his Herald and the Blood Crusher too, with pretty good stats, and the two Cultists. If he had just banked resources, he had a bigger starting army. He probably would have been able to get the Bloodthirster and bring it in, and probably may have been able to make this middle fight more decisive in the beginning. Because I did have trouble bouncing between these two objectives, because they're pretty close together, but even still, Nurgle's unit's pretty slow. Having the Vanguard deployment so close to this objective there really helped out. And then, yeah, just managed to work it down. Gonna look at the values now. You're gonna see pretty good numbers here. You know, this guy, 1600, didn't quite pay for himself, but provided a really meaty body to have to try and work through. 2800 on the Great Unclean one, too. Technically didn't pay for himself. It's very often the case with Nurgle. You know, they just hold. They hold forever. You hold those objectives and you just grind down your opponent. You can see the value on his Flesh Hounds. Absolutely absurd. You know, double the value that these guys were getting on here. This Cultist paid for himself. This one, not so much. Herald just got wrecked, you know. He was not meant for this world. They got in here and did some pretty good damage at one point to the Great Unclean one, like I said. He just needed more from that. Needed more single entity meat. Skull Crushers didn't get their value back. They tried. They didn't really have too many good targets to engage against. He probably brought this just in case I brought a Soul Grinder, because Skull Crushers do good armor piercing, and that's one of the few armored units that Nurgle has. So probably brought it just to work through anything like that. Probably shouldn't have brought this in, though. Probably would have been better off. I don't know what you bring. Maybe you bring your own Soul Grinders, Khorne, because it does have a good ranged attack. Fire its laser beams in here and do damage and just try to grind through these armies, man. But, you know, he did his best with what he had, and he did really well. It was a really close game, like I said, and, you know, there you go. Good value on the Spawn. Didn't pay for themselves, but held the line well. Beast of Nurgle did okay. Got decent value on the Forsaken. This unit of Furies, oof. Got really good engagements. I think it's when I brought it in to help take down, I think it was that second fight on the side objective there, my side objective, that I was able to get good work in with these guys, getting a good rear charge. They do pretty good DPS for a Nurgle unit. One of the few things that does. These Furies paid for themselves. You know, Furies are so cheap, very cost-effective units. Nurglings got bodied. They didn't really provide much actual value. These got 400 though. It's pretty good considering. But you know, they were there to hold objectives and just provide bodies. These Rotflies, you know, got 5 kills, all of them on Blood Crushers, I'm sure. But you know, they weren't long for this world once the Fleshhounds got in there and tore through my unit of Furies that was protecting them. Didn't go too well after that. Never brought this one in. But yeah, there you go. Pretty good fight, pretty good game. Really well played. Had a lot of fun with it too.